We stay with rugby news. Now, tonight we've had, well, a rather worrying story from a hugely successful Varsity Shield tournament. Now, one of the bright sparks of this year's tournament is the Walter Sisulu University. The All Blacks, that's what they call themselves, a team. They've been very successful on the field of play, but off the field, things have been, well, anything but rosy. From issues pertaining to registration of players for education purposes as students to study at WUSU, basic nutrition, match fees to standard living conditions. To help us understand this situation, we have Grit sports journalist Yolulwe Qoshe joining us right now from the Eastern Cape. Yolulwe, welcome to Sports in the Full View. Thank you very much for joining us. I think let's start with a piece you wrote. I picked it up during the day. Insightful piece. Opened up a lot of our eyes, because when we see rugby, when we think rugby, we think it's all rosy, in particular the way that the WUSU All Blacks have been performing on the field of play. You think they're having the time of their lives.
Yeah, definitely. I think the story when it came out would have caught a lot of people off guard. Imagine me getting the news firsthand, because I was one of the biggest champions of the team and the way they were playing at Varsity Shield. So I thought everything was well. I thought the management was doing well for them to be playing like a well-oiled machine. But to my surprise, that was anything but the case.
Let's take us, well, there's a couple of pointers that you went through in your piece there. Let's start with the first one. Basic thing like registration of those rugby players to school. The funds are there because they're being funded by Varsity Cup in itself. So they shouldn't have issues with playing rugby and, being registered to study.
Yeah, interesting one actually, because in years gone by, according to one of the members of the senior team panel that I spoke to last night, in the years gone by, the university has made it a point that every player within that squad gets that down payment of 10% of the tuition paid for well in advance of this type of situation, right? So now it was a huge shock for everybody when the players who were not on NSFAS, so could not get the funds for registration, were told that they would have to play for that 10% using their match fees. So that was almost unheard of. Now that sparked a huge debacle, leading to the players going to the school's SRC trying to get a special case fund going. So from the SRC was told, no, the funds are available. We've seen the funds coming from Varsity Cup. The only thing that isn't there now is a head of sports to fall off, because the head of sport had just resigned after telling them that they would have to play for that 10% down payment. So it was mind-boggling. The only time the pressure told and the funds came was when the players said, okay, fine, if I have to go and sweat it out just for registration fee and not even get rewarded.
I hope that line does come up with Yolulwe as we have, speaking this important conversation. Hopefully his line does come back to us. So we'll try and dial him up again, because this is an interesting topic. And I said, he wrote a piece earlier today, did Yolulwe. I'm just going to give you some excerpts of what you read in the piece. He talked about food issues that some of these rugby players are going through, speaking about, just a quote, some of what he wrote. Before 2019, the players used to, buy ready-made food for the players, the school anyway, used to buy ready-made food for the players. Yolulwe, thank you very much. You cut there for a minute. Glad to have you back. Apologies for the loss of that connection. Let's come back to the point you are still speaking about right now. Players as well had to fight for their... players had to also fight for their registration fees, apologies, not registration fees rather, but match fees that they should have been given following matches that they've won or matches that they've scored bonus points on. But even that money, which was there once again given by the sponsors, didn't come to their pockets.
Yeah, the agreement was that even before they left the first bio bubble in Pretoria, that by the time they come back home to East London, one, the food will be sorted out, and two, they will have their match fees for the 3 games that they won convincingly handed to them, right? So now the situation as it stands is that, one, they don't have the food that was promised for 2 weeks, and two, they don't have the match fees as it stands. So the situation with the match fees is very important. Now, I need people to understand is because all of all of Wusu's varsity Shield's remaining fixtures are hinging on what happens tomorrow morning. So the players came out and told management in their ultimatum, if I can call it that, that if the match fees are not paid in full by tomorrow morning, they are simply not getting on that plane to Gauteng, and they're keeping their stance, and they're going to remain resilient, and they will keep striking.
Well,
So
you
the match fee situation is very, very, very important.
Yeah. Well, you've been on the story. I know that you've updated me. You did this early this afternoon. There were some revelations that came out of an impromptu meeting or an emergency meeting held by the stakeholders, the players, of course, and the university. What is the latest, if you have anything for us?
Yeah, so initially, part of the reason why the highly esteemed guests, like such as the MEC of the province, came to see the players was to try and sort out this debacle. Now, before I came on air, I got a voice note from one of the players saying we have never ever spoken to any or seen any of these people before, but because we have pressed so much, only now people are starting to come to us and hear what we have to say. And he even went as far as saying, this is always the situation for us. We have to go the extra mile. We have to put pressure. We have to be almost radical for us to be heard, right? So what happened at the meeting, the players relayed their stance that they're not going to do the post-bubble testing unless they get the food. So the food was given to them. And then now they then said that if the match funds are given to them, then they're not going to go. So that's where everything is right now. That's where the meeting was adjourned with the esteemed parties.
Yeah. Let's just for the sake of our viewers as well, if to give some background on how good this team is. In their opening match of the varsity rugby shield varsity shield tournament, which is basically universities in South Africa, they all play rugby. Their opening match, they played against DUT, and they put 136 points on them. Then their next match, they played against UKZN, beating them by 32 points to 31. Then their third match, they had I think they had a bye in one of the weeks, and their third match as well, which they played, if I'm correct, they beat FNB UFH by 46 points to 12. So they're playing good rugby. They currently joined, well, they're second on the log, having played 3-1-3. The reality, though, of this team is that they should not be struggling. 1, 2, the money is there for players to play rugby and ask for basic nutrition and food. It's an indictment on how the sports or Wusu is handling this team's plight. Seem to have lost Yolulwe once again. The important question that, as I was saying, whilst reading through his story earlier about the food issues, players had to cook their own food, and as far as what the story, well, the narrative that he got from the players that he spoke to, these players were given, well, they were bought uput, well, milli meal, if I can put it that way, potatoes, and they had to cook their own foods, nothing nutritional, pap and place if they had an opportunity to do so. It is dire. What I'm saying is that these players should not be going through this, in particular because they're good for it, they're playing good rugby, the money is there. It's an indictment on Wusu for, well, basically mismanaging funds that are due for players. How are they expecting our players to perform at this high level, in particular black players, when they need the basics such as nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, it's mind-boggling, really, isn't it? Because you would think that if you are sending out a group of players to go and represent your school, you'd want to have them in the best condition, and you're going to have to put out all the stops to make sure that nutrition, a basic need for any athlete, is well sorted out in advance, you know? So it's a huge sticking point for them. And they really raised it. I mean, they went into graphic details. You know, they said that the meat had a stench when it came to them. They saw the grocery packages with cockroaches and stuff like that, which you wouldn't even associate with the team that's playing at that pinnacle on TV. You know, you wouldn't associate those type of conditions with a team like that. And on top of just that aspect of things, one thing they wanted me to raise the most before I came on air is that indemnity form that tells them that if a player gets injured on duty, then Wusu have no responsibility for And then in one of the
Oof.
players said he's seen players have surgery, he's seen players have operations for 40 or 50,000 grand, and they're still stuck in those type of situations. So they don't make the environment conducive for them at all. It's a miracle that they're performing the way that they are. So credit to them for that. Mental strength, note.
The point that you just made, that WUSU has asked them to sign indemnity form saying that if they get injured, the university is not liable. That in itself is something that we've been trying to get the university to have a chat with us. And I'm going to say it again, and I said to you before the show, we have reached out to the University of Walter Sisulu at 10 to 6 p.m. this afternoon. I called Bongo Nunjinga, who's WUSU Rugby. At 6 p.m., I called him again at 1840. At 1990, I've left numerous messages on his phone call, about 6 voicemail and WhatsApp. So I did offer them right of reply, because what we're hearing is very shocking. There's no ways that a university can say, or any school says to you, go and participate for us, but if you get hurt, you will not get paid, or you will not be taken or treated at a hospital by us. I hurt my eye when I was playing cricket at high school. The school took me to the hospital, x-rays, everything paid for the school. What has the feeling being on the ground in East London and with the school when you have approached them, ask them of these?
Well, the school has, like you said, they haven't really had any communication with anybody. It's not just myself, but I spoke to a person at True FM. They told me since the morning they left the coach a message. There hasn't been a reply. On a sports page, I was tagged by someone telling me they're working on the story, and since whatever time, they've also been frustrated with no end in terms of a response. But what I would predict maybe will happen was that tomorrow, because they've had some sort of situation resolved right now, they will be able to come out to the media and be able to tell their side of the story. But having said that, I just wanted to point out something that the players wanted me to point out, saying it's their side of the story. In terms of the funds, just beyond the funds of people, just beyond the Varsity Cup funds, there have been people donating funds to the team because they just appreciate the way they play. So I'm being told a sum of 17,000 rand was donated to the team, right? And now the players themselves are asking me to emphasize that out of that 17,000 rand, they were given to split amongst themselves just 5,000 of that amount, and the rest was given to the management in a manner of meeting them halfway, because as I also understand, the coaching staff have not been paid as well.
But
so
surely
there's a lot going on there.
But surely the athletes should take first preference. I mean, the management not being paid by the school, that's between them and the school. We complain as black South Africans that we need more black players playing rugby. We've got a black captain coming from that part of the country, yet kids who look up to him are eating meat with stench, food with cockroaches, and they're told, well, get on with it.
Yeah, it's a travesty, really. It's a travesty, because they're telling me that, imagine being out on the tournament. I think just before I came on air as well, they told me just before they went to the first bubble, they played a friendly game against NMU, just our neighbors in PE, and all they had was bread and dry bread and just, I think it's pop. That's it. So the situation isn't conducive at all for them. I can't imagine where they get, all this energy to play the way they play, because nothing about what's happening off the field mirrors what happens with them on the field. It's just a...
Yeah, tough story indeed there. I must say, we appreciate your journalism with that story coming to us, and I picked it up again as the line is dropped. I think we got a bad line there with Yolulwe Qoshe, who's the reporter out in East London. I picked up a piece early in the day where he spoke about how the rugby players, the WUSU All Blacks, the Walter Sisulu University, their rugby team are called the All Blacks, the issues that he raised, issues simply, as he said, the food that they eat. It's got no nutrition. The living conditions, they've literally had to ask hostel mothers where they stay at the varsity to cook for them. In fact, in some instances, as you were saying, they'd had to cook for themselves this before matches, playing against other big universities, whether it's University of KZN, the likes of Rose. They're going to play against Rose University next weekend. And this is when they're saying, actually, they're drawing the line if they are not sorted out, whether it's academics, registration for school, the money sitting with management, Food basics is what they're complaining about. Yolulwe, I hear that you're back with us. I just want to say, passing shot from you. Overall, you're expecting something to come out by tomorrow morning. From then on, do you think that they'll fulfill their fixtures? And do you think that the rest of the season will go as planned? Or, as you said in your piece, that's it, the guys are calling it quits?
Look, with my understanding, the guys do want to push ahead and play. I think that's their objective because they see beyond this. They want to give themselves an opportunity to make something out of rugby beyond varsity. So they want to go ahead and show their talents. A lot of these guys, like I said in my piece as well, they've got high expectations at home. So everything they make from rugby goes back to their family. So this is basically all they have. So a lot of not just Wusu's varsity shield campaign hinges on tomorrow, but a lot of people's livelihoods and families hinge on them getting that agreed match fees money tomorrow morning for them to proceed and go to the second bio bubble. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see. I'll try to keep people up to date as soon as I get news from that side tomorrow morning, whether the money has come through or not, because that's a huge deciding factor for Wusu's campaign in the Varsity Shield. I understand.
Great sports journalist Yolulwe Qoshe, thank you very much indeed for joining us, sir. Once again, outstanding journalism, nice piece there. We appreciate your work. And if you do get updates, please do contact me. We'd like to have you on again just to unpack what the latest is on that. Thank you very much there to Yolulwe for that piece. Once again, something I picked up on the socials, interesting piece. And once again, we're extending rights of reply to the Walter Sisulu University. As I said, we have been trying to get hold of them throughout the evening to join in this conversation. Unfortunately, up until now, none have come back to us.